Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to the Legislative Update Town Hall. I'm Dave Davies. I'm chair of the External Affairs Committee. And on behalf of my fellow committee members, I want to thank you for coming or tuning in. We are streaming this on Zoom. The External Affairs Committee is charged with advising the LOWA board on matters happening outside the gates, but that affect our community. Members of the committee attend Board of Supervisors meetings, Rapidan Service Authority board meetings, and various webinars put on by governmental, civic, and environmental organizations. We try to keep up with publications, blogs, and social media about issues like county government, schools, water and sewer, electricity, and development around Lake of the Woods. I'd like to recognize fellow members of the External Affairs Committee at this time. Would you all stand or wave? I think there are about 5 or 6 of us here, including Terry, who's working the door and receiving questions over there. I'd also like to recognize those members of the Lake of the Woods Association board who are here tonight. Would you please stand if you're on the LOWA board? I know there are about 5 of you here. Thank you for coming. Thanks to our presenters, Sandy Harrington, who's the District 5 representative to the Orange County School Board, Bryan Nicol, District 5 representative to the Orange County Board of Supervisors, and Delegate Phillip Scott, who will join us in a little while. His children are receiving awards this evening, and he asked if he could go last so he could see his children get the awards. But Craig Francis, Delegate Scott's legislative aide, is with us tonight up here. Thank you for coming. Tonight's format will be interactive. Each presenter will speak for about 10 or 12 minutes about topics relevant to their area. We will then take questions and answers for about 15, 20 minutes for each speaker. Some of you have already submitted questions in writing. We'll take those first. And if time permits, we'll then take questions from the floor. So first up is our District 5 Orange County Supervisor, Bryan Nicol.
Well, good evening. Thank you all for coming out to this town hall meeting. It is an honor and a privilege to serve as your county supervisor for District 5 and Lake of the Woods. Dave, thank you and the External Affairs Committee for organizing and putting on this town hall meeting. It's great to see our LOWA board members here. You know, I appreciate the opportunity to provide you with an important update and to take your questions here in a little bit. Last night, I joined my colleagues on the Orange County Board of Supervisors to unanimously approve the county budget for the upcoming fiscal year that starts on July 1. The major budget highlights for the next fiscal year include the following: a $250,000 water supply initial investment, 4 new sheriff's deputies for the patrol division, the fire and EMS funding increases to shore up that fund, and strong support for our Orange County schools. Budgets are a reflection of values and priorities. For me in Orange County, those priorities in this budget are water, public safety, and schools. On the $250,000 water supply investment, the board approved startup funding for efforts to create a 30 to 60-day water supply storage area in eastern Orange County, coming on the recent issues regarding water availability and RSA water emergencies that occurred last year and more recently with the boil water advisory. For the 4 new sheriff's deputies for the patrol division, the board has authorized the Orange County Sheriff to hire 4 new sheriff's deputies for its patrol division, which will help. It's not everything, and I support 8 new deputies, but given the budget constraints that we had this year, we have authorized 4 to begin that process. It's been a very significant 2 weeks working with the sheriff and his team and my colleagues on the board to bring that forward. On the fire and EMS funding increase, we approved an increase in fire and EMS funding to stabilize the fiscal resources of those departments, reduce reliance on the general fund, and focus on training and retention of our fire and EMS staff in the county. That was something that the general fund had propped up for a while now, and we are taking some measures to shore up that fund, and I'll talk about the details in a moment. And then finally, our support for Orange County Schools, where we authorized budget approval to enact, and I'm sure Sandy will talk about this in a minute, salary adjustments for teachers to support a strong education program for our students. I worked with the Orange County School Board and District 5 member Sandy Harrington in particular, as well as Superintendent Hornick, to bring that to fruition. Let me talk about some of the specifics for a second. The levy on properties for the fiscal year that starts on July 1 will be a total of 62 cents per 100 of assessed valuation. This is a new rate based on a reassessment of properties across the county. The reassessment accounts for an approximate 31% increase in property values since our last assessment or reassessment in January of 2020. So it's been 5 years since we reassessed properties in the county. As you might imagine, I think many of you know, property values have increased substantially during this time, and the reassessment means that the tax rate needed to be equalized first, and then any increases would have to be enacted on that equalized amount. So in terms of the general fund and the fire and EMS fund that make up our real estate levy, there is no tax increase on the general fund. That rate will stay at the equalized number of 47 cents per 100 of assessed valuation. The fire and EMS fund will now be at 15 cents. That's an increase of 4 cents. And as I mentioned, we needed to stabilize that fund and stop the general fund contributions to fire and EMS. It's going to be critical for us to maintain that at the level we are, that we've approved, so we can retain our firefighters and our emergency responders. Through strong collaboration and communication, the board has approved budget measures that begin water supply planning and development for our local area in Eastern Orange to protect and enhance our public safety through funding critical initiatives for our sheriff and fire and EMS departments, and provide important investments in our county schools, including for teachers' salaries. These key priorities were especially important to enact in what was a very difficult budget year. We must continue to work collaboratively to keep our taxes low while supporting important county functions to deliver vital services to our citizens. I worked with my colleagues on the board, with Sandy, with Superintendent Hornick, Sheriff Smith and his staff, and our broad county staff to get to this point. Our local tax revenues and needed services are simply not keeping up with the increased housing development that is occurring across the county. And more will need to be done in the future to meet the needs of all of you and the rest of Orange County citizens in the near term. As the budget year moves forward, the board will also continue to monitor state and federal funding impacts and the broader economic headwinds that we are beginning to see impact our county revenues. So our budget is in place. We did it last night, and that will take effect in July. That 4-cent increase, you'll receive a reassessment and an ultimate 4-cent increase on the fire and EMS That'll be in the bill that'll be due in December. So the current bill that you have that's due in June is, as you might have looked and noticed, is the same as last year. So we are now in a process where we're moving our tax year to be consistent with our fiscal year. I think that's a smart move on our part, and it makes things a lot simpler and easier to fund. Now let me talk about some zoning issues and revisions. I've written in my Lake Currents column about the updates to the zoning and subdivision ordinances and changes and potential changes to zoning districts. The Planning Commission presented draft write-ups to the board for new or revised zoning districts to cover changes or modifications to those districts, such as our agricultural districts and potential new districts, such as a rural service, a rural residential, and technology districts. We expect that process and the rewrite to continue into early 2026. We have about a year to go in that process. And of course, there will be public hearings before the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors with opportunities for the public to comment and provide input on any of those proposed changes in our zoning and subdivision ordinances. Next, I want to give a brief update on RSA. And I want to mention to you all that at my request, the Rapidan Service Authority will now be live streaming its board meetings. In fact, tomorrow at 2 p.m., the RSA board will make history by live streaming its board meeting for the first time ever. And then today's technology, we have the technology, as they say, to make this happen. I've been attending the monthly RSA board meetings for some time now, and I grew increasingly concerned about the lack of open and transparent governance, including not using technology to broadcast and record their board meetings for the citizenry. I'm a strong advocate and proponent for open and transparent governance and operations, and this is an important step forward by the RSA board. For those who are interested, and I checked a couple hours ago, there are about 140 subscribers to the RSA channel on YouTube. You can subscribe. It doesn't cost anything. You can go onto YouTube and look up the RSA channel and subscribe, so you can even receive notifications. If you're not able to watch it on the live stream, they'll record it. And you can watch the board meetings either live tomorrow at 2 or on a recording later when it works for you and your timing. I'll continue to hold RSA accountable, especially as the sewer pump stations here in Lake of the Woods and the water treatment plant upgrades move forward. We have significant water issues, as we all know and have experienced. We need a new water treatment plant. We need water storage so that we have an alternate source for the shorter term in this part of the county. And we need a long-term solution, of which I am working with a 9-county region on as well. I know Delegate Scott will speak to one of these matters of accountability in a little bit. A bill that he brought forward during the last session of the General Assembly, and one that I testified in favor of, was passed. I'm not going to steal his thunder. It's good news along those transparency and accountability fronts, and I think you'll be pleased to see what Delegate Scott brought forward and what I proudly supported. Two newsworthy items from our board meeting last night. Last evening, I brought forward, and the Board of Supervisors unanimously approved a proclamation to honor the LowLink organization on its 10th anniversary. LowLink's mission is to enable older adults to remain in their homes and provides continued connections to our community with support from volunteers. I'm incredibly honored to be able to present this proclamation on behalf of Orange County to LowLink at their upcoming 10th anniversary dinner celebration. It's a wonderful organization that is now keeping more than 300 people in their homes in our community. There's a whole bunch of stuff that they do outside of that, and I won't get into that due to time constraints. But when you see anybody involved with LowLink, please give them a high five and a handshake and a hug for all the efforts they're doing for our older citizens. Finally, the Board of Supervisors approved Orange County as a guarantor for an affordable housing redevelopment project in Orange County in conjunction with the Encompass Community Supports Board. Our own Lake of the Woods resident, Janice Riley, serves as chair of the 5-county Encompass Supports Board and has been a key leader and a strong advocate for providing comprehensive mental health, substance use, developmental disability, housing, children's, and aging services. Encompass is a phenomenal organization that works in our region to deliver these services, and we're able to have an affordable housing project in Orange County that otherwise would not have happened without their work and the board's efforts to serve as guarantor for that important work, to keep people and give people opportunities to have a home. With that, I will take questions from the audience. I think Dave has some, and Dave, I'll let you read them or do whatever you want to take questions from those who are here.
All right. You partially answered this one already, but what is the current state of Orange County Board of Supervisors' relationship with RSA?
Well, I think the board, well, let me say two things about that. First of all, the board is absolutely aligned 100%, all 5 of us, in support of advancing water supply solutions in Eastern Orange. Now that is the Board of Supervisors, and it is not the RSA board. So one thing to keep in mind, we have 2 members from our Board of Supervisors on the RSA board, and our county administrator is on the RSA board. So we have a majority of Orange County representatives and residents that are on the RSA board. I would say that we have a positive relationship. We're communicating better, we're collaborating better, but there is great strides that need to be made. In fact, as I was calling for the live stream of their meetings, it took a couple of meetings and a letter to formally get that done, but they unanimously approved that. And I found that in that process, as you work with RSA, they're limited in many of their resources. They haven't stepped up on the communication front, for example. And I talked to them about that, and I said it would be important if you could communicate a little bit better and give us some advance notice. So I know Lake of the Woods, we've worked here locally with the board, with Lake of the Woods and RSA to have better communications when there are incidents with RSA's equipment, with RSA's assets inside Lake of the Woods. And that's especially important when we consider we have 2 lakes that have the potential for contaminants to enter if we don't take quick action. So I would say it's not perfect yet, but it's improving, and I feel optimistic that we're all rowing in the same direction.
Thanks. I just want to add something. Brian and I are often the only 2 guests at the RSA board meetings. And at the last one, I asked the question, okay, now that the extra assessment is on our bills for sewage, what's the plan? And what's the expected time frame for this? And what Tim Clemens, the general manager, said is that the RFP is being worked on to solicit contracts, but that the whole project for all 13 pump stations would probably take 5 years once they get started. So that's just something on RSA.
That's a great point, Dave. And one, I'm not speaking for RSA because I'm a ratepayer and I'm monitoring them. I think one of the most important things about that 5-year capital project is communications. And in fact, I met with the interim GM yesterday, Carolyn Broder, and we talked about that. We talked about how important it's going to be. And I know the LOWA board's critically interested in these matters so that we're communicating with our citizenry during the upgrades of those pump stations. So it's going to be important that we hold them responsible and accountable going forward. Thank you.
Great. Next question. Please tell us if any progress is being made on making a county noise ordinance, and specifically how it could be applied to data centers and industrial sites.
Yeah, great question. So currently, Orange County does not have a noise ordinance, like none, zero. Now, Lake of the Woods has some rules around noise. And I think those are sort of a positive step for us and it's important for us. But I think as we look at development that may or may not occur, whatever the uses, we ought to consider noise ordinances in those cases. And so right now, I don't think the appetite's there from my colleagues on the board, but it's something I brought up in my campaign. It's something I brought up during the Wilderness Crossing rezoning proposal. And I think in select cases, it's going to be important for us to do some noise ordinance or noise mitigation where we can. And so that's a priority of mine, especially when it comes to those industrial uses that were mentioned.
All right, next question. Do you support joining Greene County to develop the White Run Reservoir project to relieve our water shortages? What would Orange County expect to pay as its fair share? And how long do you estimate this project would take to complete?
So Greene County is looking at a major reservoir project. We initially as a board had talked about how we could join with them. There are a couple issues there. One, it wouldn't be the long-term solution for us. And Greene County doesn't have all of their ducks in a row right now. One of the options we thought was helping them with some financing, but they don't even know what the financing is going to be right now. So we don't even know what a potential scenario could look like or would be envisioned for us. The issue I have with it, and I've spoken about this publicly, is that reservoir, the only way we could get water is they dump it into the Rapidan River and then we withdraw it. Well, if our problem is with the Rapidan River, then that's not a good solution for us. So I'm concerned about putting dollars, significant dollars behind that effort because I think there are significant risks in terms of assuring whether or not we'd have water. Now, there is a bigger, broader Commonwealth planning process that's underway that'll take about 5 years for 50-year water supply. I think we would be better off investing our dollars as we've allocated the first $250,000 here in Eastern Orange to find a water storage solution that had we had that in place last August, we wouldn't have had any issues. We may have been out maybe for a 8-hour period or 10 hours they were switching over, but a 30 to 60 day water supply that's in Eastern Orange is really the best way to approach it. You don't rely on the river. You don't rely on the rain we got. We've been in a moderate drought. I hope the rain that we received yesterday and today, I'd like it to be a little, not as much at one time as we all would, but I think that that's one thing that concerns me is we've had an ongoing drought situation for some time. And our best solution is an alternate source that we control, that we have the ability to easily transfer into the water treatment plant and out to customers. We are working, and I will say for Delegate Scott, Senator Reeves, during this past session, we had many conversations, and in fact, they put in budget amendments for water supply, water treatment. They've been great to work with in that regard because these have been difficult issues, but that didn't make it in the final budget. And so I'm I'm concerned about the long term, but we're not the only community in the state that's facing water issues. But I can tell you, I know we're probably one of the only communities who are now saying we're going to do something about it and we're going to take some action. We put money where our mouth is in this budget, and it's a start. It's an initial piece to move that forward. And that's my goal, is to get that short-term storage. Maybe Greene County is a fallback option, but I'd rather put good dollars for good solutions and not good dollars for risky solutions.
Thank you. Questions from the audience?
Hi, Karen.
Are there locations that have been identified that would be appropriate for this kind of water storage within either our community or Orange?
There have been previous studies back in like '06 and I think '16 that identified some possible impoundment type areas. What we haven't done is really honed in on what it would take to have a 30-day supply or a 45 or a 60-day supply. So this funding will help kickstart some of that work to find a suitable location and do it in a way that we can marry it up with a water treatment facility. So I think I've used this analogy on some other things. In a baseball game, since it's baseball season, we're in inning 1 at the top of the inning. We've got money, we've got momentum, and now we're going to move forward looking for some solutions. But none of it's going to come easy or quick. It's going to take some time, but at least we have a unanimous board to move that ahead. So nothing set just yet.
Other questions?
Yeah, I was out of town when there was the court hearing on Wilderness Crossing. I wonder if you could give us an update, because I really haven't heard anything from that.
Sure. So I was out of town as well. I did not attend that hearing. So many of you may know, I'll just give a little bit of background here and where we see the path going forward. I was on the Planning Commission at the time Wilderness Crossing rezoning came through, and I voted against recommending approval. That was ignored, and the board voted at the time 4-1 to approve the rezoning. A lawsuit ensued. In the meantime, I ran and was elected to the board, and now I'm a defendant in that lawsuit. I was against it, obviously, and I think there are many problems with that development, and no matter what happens going forward, there will have to be some change. It's clear to me, but it's in the process of the lawsuit. So what happened? There was a court hearing here, that you and I both missed. That court hearing went the entire afternoon, I believe on May 2nd, I believe. So just maybe about 12 days ago, the county and its council and the developer council who joined in with the county filed a response to that hearing. What happens next is about 30 days for the plaintiffs who are challenging the rezoning to file a response to that, and then potentially another response from the defendants. And then the judge said, and it was reported to me by our counsel, that it's going to take some time for him to really get through the entire record, look at all the briefs and the law, and ultimately make a decision on what's called a demurrer. So that's really essentially without getting deep in legal terms, it's essentially saying you didn't really state all the claims you put in there. You don't have grounds for stating those claims. That's probably a street lawyer's, fifth grader answer. So to that so we're in a situation right now where, let's say the judge denies that sort of dismissal of those claims. Then it would move into a trial or into the or, the litigation would move forward. The judge could also say, well, on this matter, I agree, on this matter, I don't. And then even in all of that instance, the plaintiffs could come in and say, well, we're going to modify that. And then it would sort of restart the process back again. Lots of different ways it can move. It's going to depend on what the judge says. And at this point, it doesn't really, I'm just telling you process. I'm not going to talk about the merits. I actually signed an affidavit during the process when the defendants were, the plaintiffs were bringing the case. I had problems with the process. One of the problems I had has been resolved because the county rescinded it prior to me getting on the board. So there's a whole bunch of things that are going to have to happen. And remember, part of the whole process was the developer still needs to clean up the gold mines. That was no matter what if it moves forward, and clean up the mercury and some of the other issues that are out there. I think it's going to be a while in terms of anything happening. But then again, the judge could come back and rule, and sooner than we expect, and then we'll have to assess where that is and how we move forward. It's very clear to me, by the way, that let's say the judge says, this can move forward, everything's good, you're going to go ahead. We don't have water. We don't have water for 4,200 homes and a bunch of businesses. We got to fix that clearly. So there are going to be some issues if we just maintain the current water source. We found out what happens, and we can't risk that for the people that already live here and are using that water. Now there will probably be someone who hears that and will argue the opposite and say, well, they're happening, there's plenty of water. And I'm not going to get into those kinds of arguments because we got to figure out where it's going to be and then decide what action we need to take. And the action that we need to take needs to be best for Orange County and all of our residents. So that's clear to me on
Time
that.
for one more.
I'm sorry. On the water issue with the data center, what concerns me is, let's just say the judge says everything's all copacetic, let's move on. We've already voted as a county, as I would say, unfortunately, that the developer can put that in. So I don't know how you would block that at this point, but if they use 1,000 gallons of water a day, we don't have that kind of water here. So I'm not sure why they even put that through, but that's water over the dam, as it were, no pun intended. But I'm not sure how you could stop that.
Well, so there's a lot of interpretation on what was approved and what wasn't approved. In the intervening time last December, the General Assembly had a study come out called the JLARC study. And that study was a bipartisan study that said data centers and residential uses are incompatible. The data centers are industrial uses, and that development does not say the word industrial in the zoning ordinance anywhere. So my position is a data center is not appropriate for that property. It's a pedestrian, walkable community, and we have a study from the bipartisan Joint Commission of the Legislature that says data centers and residential development are incompatible. They don't work together. Don't make the mistake that other communities have made. Now, if there are 10,000 acres somewhere and you can appropriately buffer it and you mandate a certain usage of water, an inner closed loop system, the power needs to be there. There's all kinds of things that have to happen in that instance, and it's not next to residential, like literally next to residential as they were talking about, then maybe that could work, okay? But we have a study that says, look out for these kinds of things. And back to the noise issue that came up earlier, the other thing the study said was that you ought to have a noise ordinance. Because if if you have a data center campus and they fire up all the diesel generators at once, it can be pretty loud. So you got to protect the public in terms of noise issues as well. very complex issues and far from being resolved.
Brian, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up is Delegate Phil Scott, representing the 63rd District. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My apologies for being late. Some of you may have seen me sneak in. Family comes first for me, and my daughters are part of a church group called Pioneer Girls, and they were getting awards for perfect attendance. And so wanted to celebrate that. And if you know anything about the life of a politician, the fact that my wife has made sure they were there every single meeting is testimony to her commitment to that, because there's many weeks where I'm not home and she picks up that slack at the house. And so I'm definitely appreciative of her. And so with that, I'm not really sure of what the format is here because I got in late. So I'm just going to wing it and kind of go with what I think I should be doing. And if anybody says, no, that's not what you should be doing, please raise your hand and say, no, that was not the approved outline for the speakers tonight. I just want to focus on, first and foremost, RSA. I know that there's already been a lot of conversation about that. I've made the pledge and the promise not to let up until it's resolved. I've had many conversations with many folks in the community complaining about the water quality, complaining about the continuous letters saying, hey, here's this, here's that. Oh, please boil your water for this amount of time and all these things. And that's very frustrating. And I get it. We need water. We need water for ourselves. We need water for our pets. We need water for our plants. And if we don't have that clean water, if you're a plant lover, you can't water your plants. If you've got pets and you call them your furry family, you can't take care of them. And so it's important to all of us in a variety of different reasons. I know that a piece of legislation that was passed through the General Assembly this past year was already mentioned, and that was a labor of love. And it was a hard labor of love because there was a lot of people that wanted to have their way with the legislation. And at the end of the day, after we got all the stakeholders in the room, nobody left happy. And I think that's a good thing, right? Everybody had something to complain about. And the fact that we weren't appeasing one special group or one special company or organization, the only people that were really pleased with it was the government agencies, because I think that we did a good job to make sure that we're protecting you based off of what happened here and also what happened in Richmond. And so that took a lot of time, energy, and effort. And so we did get that through. It was passed unanimously. I think we can thank the Richmond water situation for that, of bringing that issue to the front and center of the legislative session. Everybody was talking about water quality in Virginia. And so there's that. A couple other things that I want to talk about in regards to RSA is right now they're trying to work on a consent order with VDH, which will outline certain things that need to be done by a certain period of time. And they've been working on that since last summer. And I don't know what the holdup is. We're trying to get answers. Where is this at? Why is this important to you? Right now, RSA is using private funding or rate increases to fund improvements and repairs. Well, what happens when you get private funding? What do those interest rates look like? They're really high, okay? If they agree to the consent order from VDH, then they can have access to revolving state funds, which are available for pennies on the dollar. And that's in the best interest of you all. And so we're having conversations with RSA, we're having conversations with, and when I say we, it's me, my staff, Senator Reeves, Supervisor Nicol. We're having these conversations and trying to push that needle because we know things need to get done. Another thing that I tried to do this past year for the water situation was I submitted a budget amendment for $26 million to help with the next phase of expansion. Unfortunately, with the way things are going with the budget for the Commonwealth this year, that was not included in the budget. There's a lot of things happening in DC and a lot of uncertainty. And so we need to be responsible legislators, whether you agree with what's happening in Richmond or you disagree or you're unsure. Those decisions that are happening in DC are going to have an impact on our revenue here in the Commonwealth. And so we need to be responsible. We need to plan ahead. And so certain pet projects, I like to call them pet projects, so they're things that you're doing for your home locality, were not included in the budget, or those that were included were cut in half. And the governor did that for those things that were made into the budget, that were those home cooking, as we call them, pet projects for the home localities. If Youngkin made a cut on this side of the aisle, he made a cut on this side of the aisle. Because we have to be prepared for what the uncertainty of the future is going to bring. So unfortunately, not bringing home that $26 million to the district. However, I'm continuing to have conversations with the administration. Governor Youngkin gets to create a budget before he leaves office. So I'm having conversations there. Also having conversations with House leadership to make sure that they understand the need for this. And so it may not be the $26 million, but maybe it's $10 million. Something's better than nothing. And so we need to make sure that I am doing what I was elected to do, and that's to represent my constituents and fight for them, be the representative from Richmond. I don't go on my own accord. I don't go and fight for what I think I need to do. I fight for what my constituents tell me is important. And for Orange County, my portion of Orange County this past year has been very clear. It's fixing the water issue is the number one thing. And so making sure that I am fighting for that and advocating for that. A couple other things, not necessarily district related, but kind of on the higher end of things that that I tried to get through. Some things I did get through and some things did not. One that I want to highlight is a portable benefits piece of legislation. I've been advocating for this for the past couple of years. You might be sitting there wondering, what is portable benefits? Well, I'm glad you asked. A lot of folks, they may work for DoorDash, Uber Eats, or they may be a gig worker. They might be a freelance writer or a freelance photographer, or freelance web designer. And they don't have access to the benefits that a W-2 employee would have, whether it be healthcare, retirement, things of that nature. There are some banks out there that have portable benefits accounts that people can contribute into, tax-free money that they can then use for health insurance, dental insurance, life insurance, 401k. And so right now, the way Virginia code is written is it is against the law for anybody to make a contribution on behalf of a 1099 employee. So the legislation was just to get rid of that red tape and make it so that if DoorDash, out of the kindness of their heart, wants to make a contribution to somebody's portable benefits account, they could do so. No tax incentive, no financial impact to the budget, just getting rid of that regulatory burden. It didn't make it through committee, but the conversations have started. And so we need to have those conversations. And one of the things that can be frustrating in Richmond and any level of government, as Supervisor Nicol was talking about with the Wilderness Crossing, right? You got this litigation that's going to go on it could go 3 months, 6 months, or years. Things take time. And when you introduce a new topic that's kind of against the grain of what people have traditionally thought, especially when it comes to gig workers, freelancers, is, oh, you're 1099, you take care of all of your expenses and the company doesn't pay for those. Times have changed. Gig workers, independent contractors, freelancers, they really started gaining popularity around 2010 or so. And then after COVID, it skyrocketed the amount of folks that do that. There's almost 250,000 folks in Fairfax County alone that are gig workers. And so it's huge. They might be gig workers for different reasons, whether they want to or their lifestyle requires it. And so again, just making sure that we are providing that opportunity. Didn't make it through, but even in that not making it through, I think it's still a win because those conversations are happening and we're trying to bring more awareness to that. Again, two years in a row, I carried legislation. First year had a financial impact. Second year, we got rid of that hurdle. And then again, see what we can do in a bipartisan matter moving forward. On that note, bipartisanship, last year, two groups of high school students reached out to me from Northern Virginia, a group of a youth Republican club and a youth Democrat club. They both came together and they said, Delegate Scott, we got this great idea for you. I said, well, if you two groups agreed on it, it must be the best idea ever. And it's something that's actually near and dear to my heart. It was the media literacy bill that we carried. And basically what it does is for the standards of learning, when they're reassessing standards of learning on a regular basis, they must look at teaching and educating and equipping our children to be able to navigate social media, to have proper digital citizenship, and to be able to navigate and to differentiate between truth and misinformation. Because we all know there's a lot of misinformation that goes on out there. And I'll stand right here and I'll say it's from both sides. You know, I opened up Facebook just a few moments ago, and one of the first things that popped up in my feed was President Trump got shot. And I was like, that's not right. Okay, so we have to be able to navigate these things. You have to be able to understand how to fact check yourself. Frequently, my wife will share something with me. She's like, hey, I saw this on social media, but then I read this article. And so we need to be able to have that training, because unless we're training our children to be responsible in the digital realm, that's also going to have an impact on how they're responsible in the real world. And so that's something that's actually near and dear to my heart. Trying to train my girls as they're navigating social media, YouTube, things of that nature, helping them understand that responsibility that they have to be cautious of the content that they encounter. And so we need to make sure we're doing that. Another piece of legislation that I carried, and it went through a few different versions before we finally got something through. And again, this was bipartisan, working on both sides of the aisle. The past couple of years, the PII, personally identifying information for homeschool families, has been shared with third-party organizations. And that's against Virginia code. That's breaking the law of sharing that personally identifying information, names, addresses, email addresses of these homeschool families and students with these third-party organizations. And it's happened in a few different counties across the Commonwealth. And it was brought to my attention. We submitted legislation. Originally, it was, okay, the homeschool family can file an injunction if this happens to them. Well, for some folks that sat on the education committee, that filing an injunction was a little too strong of a word, because nowhere else in that section of code is a parent given that ability to file an injunction for such a thing. Okay, so what's your suggestion? Well, the result was simply that in the annual memo that goes out at the beginning of the next school year, the superintendent's memo, there's going to be a reminder to all the school districts, this is against the law if you do this. And so let's see if that works. If that works, problem solved. If it doesn't work, then we can go back with maybe that injunction language. But again, we want to make sure that we're protecting the identity and the personally identifying information. And I use PII because I come from a security clearance investigations background. That's my day job. And I know how important it is to protect people's personally identifiable information. So those are some highlights that I just wanted to point out. Again, those things are bipartisan efforts that I'm doing, making sure that I'm going to Richmond, I'm fighting. And yes, there's plenty of other legislation that I carried that didn't make it through. I had a piece of legislation that veterans who are 100% disabled, their primary dwelling up to 1 acre of land is tax exempt. Some localities will tax a paved driveway, some localities won't. So we tried to incorporate the paved driveway as part of that process. It made it through the House and it died in the Senate. Some wins, some losses, right? And so that's just the nature of things in Richmond. Another topic that I heard when I was sitting here is data centers. Supervisor Nicol and I both serve on the Rappahannock River Basin Commission, and I'm actually the chair of that commission this year. And one of the things that we're focusing in on with a narrow focus is data centers, because it impacts two resources that we have, our water and our energy. And so we need to make sure that energy infrastructure is there. And we also need to make sure the water resources are not being wasted. And Supervisor Nicol talked about some of these recyclable systems that recirculate the water. There's some that use a certain additive in there. It's a lot of questions about the safety of that additive. But there's a lot of different things that have come up, and instead of just the regular evaporative system where they just keep dumping water and water and water to cool the system, there are some new technologies that come out. And so we're looking at those things. That way, when the information comes out there, it can be passed on to these localities. And when they take votes on data centers, they can do it with the most information possible. Another thing that we're looking at with the data centers in particular is, again, location. That JLARC study provided a lot of good information. And then the other one is the energy consumption. right now, no data centers. Our infrastructure will be good for another, was it 25 or 50 years, something like that, with moderate increase. With data centers, it's like a 50% increase on energy demand. Goes from like 4% increase over the next 25 years to a 50% increase over the next 25 years because of the amount of energy that data centers consume. And our electrical infrastructure will not support it. So what have we done to address that so that those things don't fall on you? Well, Dominion did a carve out subcategory of high energy users that forces them to pay for at least 60% of allotted power. And a few other pieces of legislation that have gone through to make sure we're protecting the residential ratepayer, keep them in a separate class of their own, while creating a separate subclass for these high energy use facilities that are not necessarily industrial because they're not a manufacturing plant, not exactly residential, not exactly commercial. So creating a carve out for high energy consumption by these data centers. And so those are some of the things that have been done. Is that good? Anything else that I should say?
No, you're good. We
I
have
see you standing in the back corner. So
we have some questions and then
All right.
open it to the audience. Thank you very much. First question about data centers. There were numerous bills proposed in the recent session to put guardrails on data center construction, including mandatory impact studies, yet none of these passed in any meaningful way. What were your reservations in not supporting these bills?
that's a really great question. So without having the pieces of legislation in front of me, one of the hesitations of, can you repeat the last part of that question?
Yes, none of the bills passed.
Before that.
Bills to put guardrails on data center construction, including mandatory impact studies, yet none of those passed in any meaningful way. What were your reservations in not supporting them?
So one of the challenges when we do anything in Richmond is what we do in Richmond impacts all of Virginia. Unless it's special legislation for a specific locality, it impacts every locality. And so what might be good for Orange County will not be good for Loudoun County, or what might be good for Loudoun County will not be good for Orange County. And so we need to make sure that we're looking at that and considering how something may be crafted. And it might be crafted in a way that it specifically addresses an issue in Northern Virginia or in Richmond, but in Orange County, it will not have the same impact and the same effect. And the other challenges is with some of these studies and some of these guardrails, it's government red tape that causes an increase in the cost for construction, the cost for maintenance, the cost for whatever it may be. And then we got to go back and we got to undo some things or fix some things. An example of this is part of the Clean Economy Act, I do believe it is, there's regulation about generators. And problem was at military installations, they have backup generators they have to test on a regular basis, but they were putting out emissions beyond the standard. And Senator Reeves had to come back and create a carve out so they wouldn't get fined for doing maintenance on their generators. Okay. So while it looks good on the surface, when you dive into the details of what the legislation does, it's not always accomplishing what it sets out to do. And then another thing that can be problematic is the person who's presenting the legislation does not do an adequate job explaining it, or they explain it completely wrong from what's described. And so that can also cause folks not to support. So again, not having any specific legislation in front of me, those are some of the challenges.
Thanks. Generators, next question relates to that. Do you think you can get Virginia DEQ to require all new data centers in the state to have generators that comply with EPA Tier 4 best available air pollution control technology?
I think that's something worth looking into. And so if I could get that card afterwards, that way I can do a little bit more research into that. Absolutely.
Next question, what are you doing to protect and support in this community regarding women's health, LGBTQ health, et cetera?
What am I doing to protect this community regarding women's health and LGBTQ health? I view health as health. The water issues for Lake of the Woods impacts everybody. And so if there's unclean water, the water doesn't care what you look like, what your belief system is. Health is health. We need to make sure we have access to health. I actually had a piece of legislation this past session dealing with health records of minors. You know that all private hospitals that have online access to minors' health records are required to give parents access to that health record. But state-run hospitals, such as UVA, is not required because it's not a licensed hospital in the same standard. So the piece of legislation that we had that did not make it through the House would require them to have the same standard as a private hospital of providing access to those records. And I say that because I believe that children who may identify in one of those different categories, they need their parents' support. The parents need to know what's going on. It needs to be a family journey. And if the parents don't have access to their child's health record, the child's going to go through something alone, and it can be problematic for them going forward.
Questions from the audience for Delegate Scott? They're going to let you off easy.
Oh, come on, there's got to be at least two.
Anyone? Great. Thank you so much for coming out. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next is our District 5 School Board Representative, Sandy Harrington. And just while we're on the topic of school board, we are having a candidate forum October 9th. Delegate Scott and his opponent will be here, and we're hoping to get the two candidates, maybe three candidates, who will be running for the District 4 spot school board. Sandy's not running, so she's safe this time. But please mark your calendars. You'll hear more details about that, but October 9th. So, Sandy Harrington.
I'm going to open some water because my mouth gets really dry when I start talking, and it's really embarrassing. So first of all, good evening. I'm so excited that everyone is here tonight. It's wonderful to see that all the seats are filled and that Lake of the Woods members are interested in some of the things that are going on with the school board and with the school division. I am your District 5 representative, and as you may be aware, I am a staunch believer and advocate of public education. K-12 public education is the only institution that accepts and provides opportunities for each and every student, for all students, regardless. Tonight, I will be providing you a little bit of an overview and discussing some of Orange County's strategic plan, including highlighting some areas of success that we have. I will also provide some information on our career technical education program and facilities, a little bit of a focus on student and safety, and finally, we'll end with the budget development process. So the Orange County Public Schools Strategic Plan was developed by school division members, parents, students, and the community. It encompasses the 2023 to 2028 school years. The 5 objectives of this plan include instructional programming, safe learning environment, stakeholder engagement and support, recruitment and retention, and technology and digital citizenship. The plan is not just a living document which can be monitored and adjusted based on new data, input, or legal requirements. This plan contains the guiding principles of the entire division. This plan identifies objectives and puts in place strategies to achieve them. The superintendent and staff continually monitor the results to ensure the improvement in student learning is being achieved. Alignment of priorities ensures the strategies and objectives are being implemented with integrity across the division. at all sites and by all of the Orange County family in support of our students' learning environment. So that's just some of what we've worked on with our strategic plan, and I'm going to give you a few highlights of some successes that we have achieved over this last year relative to developing that plan. So first of all, in the area of recruitment and retention, Orange County started this year fully staffed at the teacher level. This is a great accomplishment. The division has realized a significant improvement over the past several years, and this can be partially attributed to the Human Resources Department's diligent work improving our recruitment processes. In addition, student attendance is one of the primary indicators for student achievement, and the constant process and efforts to improve student attendance over the past several years is achieving a level of success. For example, over the past 3 years, the chronic absenteeism rate at high school fell from over 51%. Unbelievable that we had that level of chronic absenteeism. However, that was during the COVID time. Subsequent to that, with the additional support and recognition, and we have went from that 51% to just under 25% chronic absenteeism. Again, that is way too high, and we need to continue working diligently to make sure that we are improving this process. We are making sure that students are in class, and we definitely appreciate the efforts of our parent partners in getting their students to school, because as we all know, students do not learn when they do not attend class. In addition, continual student assessments and subsequent state testing provides another indicator of student success. And the implementation of the Virginia Language and Literacy Screening System, VALS, shows significant district-wide success at the K-3 level. The students at high risk have realized a meaningful improvement over the 3-month assessment period, while its students at moderate and low risk continue to improve and grow. Although state testing has not been completed this year, anecdotally, we are trending in the right direction. The strategic emphasis on a high level of stakeholder engagement has resulted in collaborative efforts, providing students with opportunities for success in school and in life. For example, we have realized increased parent participation, a high level of volunteers at all of our schools. We have an active parent-teacher organization and parent advisory groups, which are an integral part of student success. The continuation of the intern program aligns with community and business partners and is growing and continues to provide positive life skills and career opportunities for students of Orange County. And a huge thank you to all of the individuals and clubs who have contributed to these efforts and success, such as the Lake of the Woods Lions and Lioness Clubs, the Low Garden Club. These organizations provide scholarships, school supplies, and other support that is really critical to our students' success. So thank you. I am going to now talk a little bit about something that you may have heard before, the CTE building and program. A decision was finally made. After many years of research, multiple proposals and options, town halls, business and community input, the decision was reached to construct a 30,000 square foot prefabricated metal building, which will be placed on the Orange County High School campus. This decision provides the ability to continue strengthening and expanding our already robust CTE program to include building trades, culinary, cosmetology, and other career and technical programs for our students. This location also ensures no impact on the Boys and Girls or Head Start programs, which are currently housed at TIAC, and it ensures our students do not require any busing or transportation to attend the CTE classes. It allows students to stay on campus and participate in other on-site activities, including extracurricular activities and student clubs. And it does relieve some overcrowding and provides a mechanism to eliminate the trailers that are out front of the high school building at this time. Those will be phased out over a time, but one of the immediate actions will be to make sure that our students are not continuing to be educated within those buildings. A request for proposal, or RFP, is currently being distributed and advertised following board policy and state guidelines. So stay tuned. We have more information to come and look forward to having the beginning of an expansion going forward within the next year. So let's talk a little bit about budget development. As Supervisor Nichols mentioned, there's been a significant challenge with funding, both at the county level, the state level, and now, of course, at the division level. And this is not based on issues that any of us are in control of. It is based on issues that are coming from the federal government, the state government, impacts that are being realized as a result of changes within the current governance structure. Excuse me, I lost my place. So those challenges include a study which was done by the JLARC Committee, Joint Legislative Action Review Committee. Is that correct? Okay. The Joint Legislative Action Review Committee last year, who made some significant findings and recommended changes for the state funding structure. So currently we have challenges in the budget area and in spending relative to how the state funds and structures our current local control index formula and how we receive our money from the county. So we have been able to work with Delegate Scott and other legislators in our Orange County Legislative Committee, of which I am a member. And we greatly appreciate that opportunity to work with you and to continue working towards achieving some of these goals. We understand that it's not necessarily going to change in the first year, but we will continue to make those relationships and communicate that information and work together to realize these positive changes for our students. Same goes for the county. I've had many conversations with Supervisor Nichols this last couple of months, and although the county is realizing just as much, if not more, challenges relative to funding and uncertainty and going forward with the many priorities they are being requested to fund. It has been a great opportunity to develop that relationship again and to realize the challenges and work together to try to make sure that each of those challenges that all of the organizations are experiencing are taken into consideration, and we greatly appreciate, excuse me, the priority that K-12 education is in Orange County. So thank you very much for that. The superintendent led the budget development process this year. Dr. Hornick started this process providing a town hall that placed attendees in the position of having to make decisions on budget priorities and adjust as departmental circumstances changed. It was a great start. It provided constituents with a better understanding of some of the daily discussions and changes that occurred during the budgeting process. Subsequently, a survey was conducted and the 24-25 budget priorities began to emerge. One of the major focuses in this survey indicated that Orange County Public Schools needed to improve its salaries for its valued employees. The current teacher salaries were in last place or second to last relative to surrounding and competing counties. As a result, Dr. Hornick and his staff worked to develop and present new salary schedule that would place our district in a more competitive position and provide a level of appreciation and respect for our staff, thereby improving our position for recruitment and retention of high-quality instructors. As a result, every employee within Orange County Public Schools will receive a salary increase starting in the 25-26 school year. Those increases will range between 3% and 6%. No employee will earn less than $15 per hour, and step increases on the teacher's salary schedule are now above the current median of surrounding districts. Again, I would like to extend my appreciation and thanks to the Orange County Board of Supervisors, District 5 Supervisor Bryan Nicol. The school division greatly appreciates the time and dedication the Board of Supervisors has provided during this budget cycle. Although there are many competing interests and there is uncertainty over future funding, the outcome shows that unified support public education has in this county. So tonight I was able to provide you a very brief update on areas such as Orange County Strategic Plan, areas of success, our CTE program and facilities, our focus on student and site safety, and our budget development process. If you have not had the chance, please take a look at the strategic plan that is posted online, and you will be amazed at the level of documentation available, including strategic objectives and outcomes in each of the focus areas that have been identified. I feel like I missed something here. Oh, I did. Okay, that's all right. This was kind of meant to be at the end anyway. One more thing that I am very excited about, that Orange County Public Schools, in collaboration with our safety committee and a multi-agency blue ribbon panel of experts, continues to put safety at the forefront of discussion and action. On June 2nd, the Blue Ribbon Panel will be bringing forth its recommendations for the next layer of the Enhanced Protection and Training Program. This recommendation will allow every employee within our district to wear and activate individual alert buttons. These buttons are programmed to alert and ensure immediate and appropriate level of response, and research shows that activation at this level provides a greater level of security than other methods such as metal detectors. So that's great. I was asked just very briefly prior to the presentation about the school board's relationship with the Virginia School Board Association, and at this time we are still not members within that organization, although our school board team has worked very hard over this past year and was able to develop a better relationship during our retreat in November, identify priorities that we could all agree on, always looking at student achievement as the North Star within which to decide what needs to be taken into consideration and what needs to be prioritized. So one of the things that we were able to accomplish is in November, we did agree to develop our own Orange County school governance norms and protocols, and we have put that in place now, and we will be doing an evaluation in July of the school board, a self-evaluation to make sure that we are meeting the goals and the promises that we have made to the constituents and to our students within this county. Oh, there was one more question that was asked of me outside. You may have that already, but I'll go ahead and address it. One of the questions that was asked before the presentation had to do with the growth and the development that is happening here on the east end of our county. And so unfortunately, although I know we have many, many parents and many people that would love to have a second high school built on this end of the county and eliminate the need for students, parents, and teachers, et cetera, to have to drive the extended period on the rural roads in our county for their students to attend school. But realistically, based on demographic and enrollment studies and other studies, we do not anticipate that we will have the enrollment to support a second high school at this end of the county for probably the next 10 years. But we are continuing to look at those things on an annual basis and revise any plans as needed. In addition to that, you may have heard some rumors that we are experiencing growth on the east side. That growth at this point is being impacted at the Locust Grove Primary and Locust Grove Elementary Schools. Fortunately for us, we are going to have to need about 5 to 6 new classrooms we anticipate going into the next school year. However, when the schools were built, they were built with the intention of possibly needing to extend wings. So in the long run, we will be working on an extension of those wings to build additional classrooms and rooms in the facility. But the short term, to meet the needs of those additional 5 or 6 schools will include taking out some of the walls that currently exist that were made and are able to be removed, so that we can use the current science classrooms and a couple different other classroom configurations to come up with that 5 or 6 extra classrooms that we will need. So we won't be needing, hopefully, any additional funding for growth at that end of the county, this end of the county at this point. So, yes.
Thank you, Sandy. Time for questions. And you partially addressed this first one about the, I know it wasn't your choice to leave the VSBA, but one of the concerns was that it was going to cost the district money for lobbying and legal and so forth. Do you have a price tag on what leaving the VSBA cost us?
I do not have that information available at this time. I have requested that information, and it does have to be disseminated based on different reasons that we are increasing our legal costs relative to both the leaving of VSBA and new members within our board.
Thank you. The CTE, and I know you were a strong supporter of building the CTE building on the high school campus, but I think you told me it's going to be 2027 before that opens. Is that?
Very, very preliminary information. We have just sent out the RFP, as I have mentioned. Once we get that RFP back, we have a better understanding of the timeline associated with the construction and implementation and putting that building in place. I have been told that we will probably not have students ready to attend that building until the beginning of the 27 school year, but that's not in stone.
Questions from the audience?
Thank you. Sandy, there was an article recently educationally focused in the Wall Street Journal about a new movement that will do away with mandatory homework and grading, et cetera, except for a final exam, and that students would be able to retake the final exam as many times as they wanted. Has the school board, are you aware of this? Has the school board discussed this? The name escapes me, but has there been any discussion of this in the school board?
No, sir, not to my understanding.
I have a bunch of questions, so I'm going to try to put them together into a streamlined question. So in the current culture of vouchers and homeschooling, and you're seeing this movement kind of culturally to people considering that, and then we see this absenteeism of 25% in 2025. That's really high. I'm wondering if you have statistical data on what age group that 25% is, if it's specific, if it's elementary school, they really have no control over it. If it's high school, the distance to that school is a bigger deal than I think people want to make. So curious.
Yes, that data was specifically relative to our high school students.
High school.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. I guess I can pass the mic. If there are no other questions, I'll take it back. Okay, so then absenteeism, is that still part of your accreditation and AYP, or is that outdated info?
I believe it is still part of the accreditation, and we do have a couple of our schools that are under a waiver. I believe that this is the last year that waiver is valid. So we are doing what we are able to do and to include parents in that process to make sure that we are working together to bring those kids to school, reaching out, doing whatever we're legally able to do to make sure that our students are in class and learning.
Yeah, that answers a little bit. My third part of that question was, what are you all doing? Like, you can try to improve it, but I used to be an educator, so I know I don't envy what you're trying to take on here. But what are you all doing? What are you able to do to change this, to
I
affect
think
change?
one of the things that they have implemented within the school division is to make sure and follow up on those absences immediately. So not to let the student have a day or two or three or four or a month, down the line before the question is asked of the parent, what's going on? What can we do to help? Why is your student not in school? So we're definitely reaching out on an ongoing basis in a timely manner. And again, trying to ensure that we have our parents as partners in bringing those students to school so that we can provide them the education that they deserve.
Last question. And I taught in Spotsylvania County schools, and for a number of Fauquier, but I never taught in Orange. So
Would you like
curious.
to substitute?
I actually taught at the school board office, but I haven't taught the students. But my question is, I lost my train of thought. Pardon me. Backing up to absenteeism and the connecting the dots. Oh, shoot, darn it. Age-related brain.
know.
I'll pass it off, and if it comes back.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Sandy, I hate to do this to you. How are you protecting a parent's opt-out choice regarding controversial subjects, including LGBTQ, sex education, class material, especially in the elementary school level? And how do you detect and instigate a new warranted opt-out if you find out it's required? This is regarding certain things going on in a DC County and possible Supreme Court activity coming up.
So let me answer the first part of that question. Would you kind of repeat the first part for me? Okay. Thank you. Okay, so we have had this conversation and many more conversations before I was a board member. At this point, we have implemented a huge increased communication effort for parents. We want to make sure that all parents are aware of what is being taught within schools, and some of those things as are taught in health, fitness classes. Parents may not be interested in having their student participate. Now, these things are mandatory instructional requirements put down from the state level, which means that even if a student or a parent opts out of this process, of this specific classroom instruction, they will still be educated and they will still have the same type of information, just provided in a different manner. So they will have modified information, but they will still meet the criteria that the state requires. In addition to that, we have put on our website an area that identifies, for example, library books. So a year or two ago, before I was on the school board, there was a big outcry about library books or books that may not be appropriate for school children. So our superintendent had the librarians do a extensive analysis through every single book within their library. We were able to identify that a few books, not very many, but a few books were placed at an incorrect grade level. So those were removed, put into the next grade level. And going forward, we have all of that listed on our website. We have the ability for a parent to opt out. They can do that with the understanding that their student will still have to complete some type of complementary or other type of criteria. As far as the question about what's going on in DC and how we're looking at that and some of the potential no homework things, I'm not aware of that conversation going on. And I think, again, just real diligence in making sure that we are communicating with our staff, that we are ensuring that those concerns are communicated and that we take appropriate action so that we are not caught with inappropriate materials or processes in place. And I think that at this point, the division has done a great job in making sure that they have not
Thank you,
not
Sandy.
ignored their diligence and their requirements.
Just want to thank everybody for coming out. This is a great turnout for our first one. Thank you to our speakers. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to our video crew. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.